Hey guys, today we're going to talk about cause and effect and compare contrast text organizational structures, two more text organizational structures to add to your repertoire. So the first one here, cause and effect. You know what cause and effect is. The words are pretty straightforward. But cause and effect is just focusing on an event or an occurrence, and then the writer names specific events or occurrences and tells what the effect of those events or occurrences are. How they affect other events, how they affect other people, what they cause, right? Chain reactions type of situations. Other times, the writer can name the events or the occurrence and then tell what caused it to happen. So you might have an event and then talk about what caused it, or you might talk about an event and then what kind of effects that it has later on down the road. A passage that analyzes a historical event or an article about a scientific discovery or process is usually follows the cause effect structure. Think about any historical event you've learned about in history class. World War One, for example, right? There are a bunch of different causes to World War One. One of the primary ones was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So that one event then causes something else, which causes something else, which then leads to the overall event of World War One. Some signal words or phrases that you'll see in a cause event structure include therefore, as a result, leads to, because of, in order to, for these reasons, another if then statement, and then may be due to. In this case, the if then statement is not quite like the ones we've seen in the past. In this case, if then means, if this happens, then this is going to happen, right? Relating to cause and effect. A cause can have multiple effects, which is something that you always want to think about too. A lot of these effects can be unpredictable or unpredicted and can be very surprising. A great example, a real life example here is in 1958 China, the president at the time, Mao Zedong, established what he called the Four Pests campaign. And it was basically just a campaign to get rid of certain animals that were causing issues within China. One target was the sparrow population, which sparrows are birds. They would kind of swoop in and eat seeds that were used for growing crops. So the seeds that farmers had to plant their crops, they wouldn't have as many seeds and therefore wouldn't be able to grow as many crops. So they figured, okay, we'll wipe out these sparrows, we'll kill off these sparrows, and then we'll be able to grow our crops. Unfortunately, after wiping out the sparrows, China was then overrun by locusts. And the sparrows ate the locusts. So if you get rid of the sparrows, there's going to be a lot more locusts. The locusts then swooped in, destroyed a lot of the crops anyway, and caused a famine. So you see here, there are unintended consequences of certain actions. The cause here is getting rid of the sparrows. The effect is the locusts increased, right? The intended effect was that they were going to have more seeds, and they did have more seeds. However, another effect was the locusts. So you can see how a cause can have multiple different pathways and multiple different effects. And if we were together, we could put together a flow chart of like all the possible things that can happen from a specific cause and how those effects then become causes in and of themselves. So some questions to consider when you're looking at a cause-effect structure is, what is the causal event or the causal object? So what is the one thing that is setting everything else in motion? What is the first domino to fall? What are the intended effects of this event or object? So what do they want to happen as a result of doing this? What are the unintended or unexpected effects of this event or object? So there's always going to be unintended or unexpected effects. And then what effects cause other effects? So from that first causal event, what happens, right? How do the dominoes fall? What is the chain reaction? And then on the other side of it, we have a compare-contrast structure. Compare-contrast structure, if you've written an essay in an English class or history class, you probably have written in a compare-contrast structure at some point. So compare-contrast really just describes similarities and differences between objects, places, events, just any two things that you're comparing. And then also identifies the similar or different qualities that are linked back and forth, right? So a lot of times you'll have two different things, and they might have a lot in common, or they might have a lot not in common. So looking at those similarities and differences is really the purpose of a compare-contrast article. An article that looks at opposing political candidates, that's usually a really good one, especially with the election coming up, right? We're going to see a lot of articles comparing Trump to whomever wins the Democratic nomination, probably Joe Biden. So we're going to see a lot of differences and similarities between those two candidates. Also, an article that compares two similar products might have this same structure, right? If you're looking at iPhone versus Android, an article that compares those two, or Xbox versus PlayStation, or whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of compare contrast structures being used in that article, and then some signal words or phrases like, similar to, unlike, in contrast, as opposed to, as well as, so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward signal words. Some questions to consider while you're looking at a compare and contrast article is, what are the two things being compared or contrasted? So what's the subject of the article? What type of comparisons and contrasts are being made between these two items? So what qualities are being compared, or what are the things that are, or what are the things that are being compared, the characteristics being compared of these things? So are they being compared physically? Are they being compared in their performance? So what are the exact details of the comparison? And then what conclusions can be drawn from this comparison contrast? This is the most important thing to think about. It's okay to have these comparisons and these contrasting ideas, but make sure that you're able to then take that information and come to a conclusion about the comparison and the contrast, right? So, for example, if you're looking at an article comparing presidential candidates, yeah, you can look at all the information, but if you can't take that information and draw a conclusion as to who you want to vote for, or if you want to vote for anyone at all, then the article is not really doing its job, right? So make sure that you are drawing some conclusions from the information you're being presented. Now, the two assignments we have this week, our first one here is for cause and effect. You're going to choose one of the articles, only one. There are two, but you only need to choose one, in the cause and effect folder on Schoology, and read it through thoroughly. Make sure you put the title of the chosen article at the top of the Google Doc so that I know which one you're looking at. In the left column of the chart on the cause and effect worksheet, you're going to list all of the events in the article that could be considered causes. And you can always add more rows to the column if you need to, but list as many causes as you can identify in that article. And then in the column on the right, you're going to list all the effects that are caused by the causes you listed. So if your first cause, and you list your first cause in the first row, the effect of that cause is going to be in the row of the other column. All right, the first row of the other column. So they should link up with one another. And again, try to include as many causes as you can. Keep in mind too that effects can become causes. Right, so something causes something else, which causes something else. So there can be chain reactions. So make sure you're paying attention to how these effects act as causes later down the road. When you're all done, answer the two questions at the bottom, and then submit that on Schoology. Very similar situation for the compare contrast assignment. I'm only giving you one article, so you unfortunately don't get to choose, but it's a pretty simple article. So read through the compare contrast birds article on Schoology, and then after you read the article, identify some of the key characteristics of each species of bird, and then organize them in the chart of the compare contrast Google Doc. All right. So each bird, the dodo bird and the great auk, are each going to have three unique characteristics, or at least three unique characteristics. You can always add more. And then also include three common characteristics between the two. And again, you can add more if you find more. When you're finished, answer the two questions at the bottom of the doc, submit on Schoology. If you have any questions, as always, please email me or reach out to me on the Google Hangout whenever I am available.